Have you ever met a man who seems stuck in a childhood version of himself, avoiding responsibility, clinging to escapism, or struggling to grow emotionally? What if beneath this boyish exterior lies a complex psychological landscape shaped by deep-seated fears, unmet needs, or unresolved conflicts? Today we're diving into the fascinating psyche of the eternal boy, men who remain immature well into adulthood, through the lens of Carl Jung's groundbreaking theories. Prepare to uncover the hidden reasons behind emotional stagnation, and maybe understand your own journey toward maturity a little better. In the journey of understanding why some men remain trapped in a juvenile state well into adulthood, one of the first concepts from Carl Jung's psychological framework that proves crucial is the idea of the persona. The persona is essentially the mask we wear, the identity we project outward to the world. It is our social face, shaped by societal expectations, cultural norms, and personal aspirations. For many men, the persona becomes a carefully crafted shell, an armor of maturity that might not fully reflect their inner reality. Imagine a man who appears confident, responsible, and self-assured. On the surface, he looks like the poster of maturity, but beneath that, he might be hiding vulnerabilities, fears of inadequacy, or unresolved childhood wounds. This discrepancy between outward appearance and inner truth is the result of the persona acting as a protective facade. It's developed early in life, often as a response to the pressures to be a man, to be strong, independent, fearless, and unemotional. This mask, while initially adaptive, can become a cage. When a man relies heavily on his persona, he may begin to identify with this false self so much that he dismisses or suppresses other parts of his personality. This is especially true if showing weakness or vulnerability has been internally condemned by societal norms or personal experiences. For example, a boy might receive messages like, "Boys don't cry," or "Big boys don't show feelings," leading him to bury his emotions deep inside. As he grows older, this pattern can solidify into a kind of performance, a perpetual act of pretending to be the mature, in-control man. But this facade often lacks genuine emotional depth. Instead of confronting his fears and vulnerabilities, he keeps them hidden behind the mask. Over time, this leads to a gap between who he is on the surface and who he truly is beneath. The true self that desperately seeks connection, understanding, and growth. This false identity can serve an important function initially. It helps the man navigate the demands of society, avoid judgment, or cover up feelings of shame. However, it also insulates him from real emotional intimacy because he's afraid that revealing his true self might lead to rejection or loss of image. So instead of developing authentic maturity, he leans on the persona as a shield, keeping him safe but also disconnected from his deeper self. Now, here's where the tragedy often lies. Because the persona is so diligently maintained, the man may not even realize that he is hiding behind it. He might believe that he is genuinely the person he presents to the world, never questioning whether his outward maturity is authentic. This illusion of maturity becomes self-reinforcing. Others might praise his confidence or strength, further fueling his belief that he has made it, even though internally he may feel isolated, anxious, or unfulfilled. A key reason why some men cling to this mask is rooted in fear, the fear of rejection, failure, or exposure. To confront their true selves would mean accepting their imperfections, vulnerabilities, and perhaps even admitting that they are still emotionally unprepared to handle life's complexities. Instead of embracing growth, they rely on the persona to avoid confronting uncomfortable truths. This reliance can be particularly reinforced in environments where emotional expression is discouraged, such as traditional family settings, certain workplaces, or cultural backgrounds that emphasize stoicism and self-reliance. Over time, the desire to appear in control becomes an ingrained survival strategy, a way to ensure societal acceptance and personal safety. However, this can have long-term consequences. When a man's identity is tied so heavily to his persona, genuine maturity, emotional, psychological, and spiritual, remains elusive. He may excel in his career or maintain a confident image externally, but inwardly, he remains emotionally immature, unable to handle the complexities and vulnerabilities of real adult life. Relationships may suffer because emotional intimacy requires the courage to shed the mask and show one's authentic self. Understanding the role of the persona in this dynamic is crucial because it highlights that immaturity is not necessarily a matter of age or external achievement, but often a question of inner authenticity. It's about how much of one's true self is visible to oneself and others. The challenge for these men, and for all of us, is to recognize when the mask has become too rigid and to find the courage to peel it away, revealing the fuller, more authentic version of oneself. Ultimately, Jung believed that creating awareness about our persona and understanding its influence is a vital step toward genuine psychological development. Only by acknowledging the existence of this mask and understanding why it was formed can a man begin the deeper work of integrating his true self. That's the first step toward breaking free from superficial maturity and progressing along the individual journey toward true emotional and spiritual growth. The next layer in understanding why some men remain stuck in their boyhood is to explore what Jung called the shadow. The shadow represents those parts of ourselves that we have repressed, denied, or simply refused to acknowledge. These are the aspects of personality that do not fit into our conscious self-image, often because they are associated with feelings or traits deemed socially unacceptable or personally shameful. As a result, these parts are pushed into the unconscious, lurking beneath the surface, shaping our behaviors in hidden ways. For many men, the shadow is kind of an emotional baggage, containing unresolved childhood wounds, fears, anger, shame, or feelings of inferiority that they have refused to confront or integrate. These unacknowledged aspects create a barrier to genuine maturity because, instead of facing our vulnerabilities, we project them outward or act them out in ways that stunt emotional growth. From an early age, a boy may receive messages that certain feelings are unacceptable. Expressing anger might be seen as aggressive, vulnerability as weakness, sadness as unmanly, or fear as cowardice. When these messages are internalized, the boy learns to suppress these emotions deep within himself. Over time, this suppression solidifies into a shadow self, a compartment of unacknowledged feelings and impulses that he refuses to acknowledge openly. This repression doesn't eliminate these feelings, it merely hides them away. But these hidden emotions continue to influence the man's thoughts, behaviors, and reactions, often surfacing in unintended ways. For example, a man might become excessively aggressive when feeling threatened because he is unconsciously acting out anger that he has refused to accept or understand. Or he might avoid confronting difficult issues altogether, because facing them would require acknowledging his underlying fears and insecurities. A common thread in stories of men who remain immature is their difficulty in owning their shadow. They might deny that they are insecure or vulnerable, seeing these qualities as incompatible with their image of masculinity. Or they might develop a tendency to project their shadow traits onto others, accusing others of flaws they refuse to see in themselves. This projection, a defense mechanism described by Jung, allows them to externalize their unwanted traits, thereby maintaining their sense of self as above those flaws. Yet this projection only reinforces their immaturity. Without taking responsibility for their shadow, these men remain disconnected from their full emotional spectrum. They may appear confident on the surface, but underneath, unaddressed fears cause reactive behaviors, jealousy, defensiveness, stubbornness, or emotional withdrawal that impede genuine growth. Childhood trauma, neglect, overprotection, or critical parenting often play a significant role in shaping this shadow. For example, a boy who is criticized repeatedly for showing vulnerability may learn to suppress any tender feelings, viewing them as a weakness. These early experiences establish patterns, such as suppressing emotions, denying pain, or acting out anger, that persist into adulthood. Many men carry a subconscious belief that showing weakness equates to failure or loss of respect. This belief keeps the shadow buried, making it difficult for them to accept parts of themselves that are uncomfortable or vulnerable. Consequently, they might develop a defensive exterior that shields the deeper wounds beneath. From the outside, they appear confident and mature, but internally, unresolved issues simmer and fester, preventing real emotional growth. Jung emphasized that integration of the shadow is a vital step toward individuation, the process of becoming a whole, authentic self. This involves bringing unconscious feelings into consciousness, accepting them without judgment, and understanding that these traits are part of our human experience. For men stuck in immaturity, avoiding this task creates a cycle of emotional stagnation. A telling example of this is a man who overcompensates with manic competitiveness or bravado, masking feelings of inadequacy rooted in childhood rejection or failure. His external success doesn't necessarily reflect inner confidence, but serves as a protective shield, an attempt to prove to himself and others that he's worthy, despite internal doubts. Until these underlying wounds are acknowledged and integrated, he remains emotionally immature, unable to connect deeply, unable to feel truly secure in himself. Often, men with unexamined shadows cling to superficial identities because confronting their real feelings threatens their fragile self-image. They may fear that acknowledging vulnerability will lead to rejection or loss of control. As a result, they operate on a superficial level, avoiding the inner work needed to heal and grow. This avoidance acts like a defense mechanism that sustains their immaturity and emotional dependence. The struggle, then, is to summon the courage to face one's shadow, a task that can be daunting because it exposes all those parts we've desperately tried to hide. It requires honesty and vulnerability, qualities that society often discourages in men. Yet Jung believed that true maturity only begins when we are willing to face the darkness within ourselves, accept it, and learn to integrate it into our conscious identity. In understanding the emotional landscape of men who remain immature into adulthood, one of Jung's critical concepts to explore is the anima, the inner feminine aspect of the male psyche. Jung posited that every man possesses an anima, just as every woman has an animus, representing the unconscious feminine qualities that influence aspects of his emotional life, intuition, and inner world. The relationship a man has with his anima, or lack thereof, can profoundly affect his capacity to mature emotionally and form authentic, deep connections. Think of the anima as a bridge to the inner world of feelings, sensitivities, and relational understanding. It is the seat of intuition, empathy, creativity, and emotional openness. When this aspect is embraced and integrated properly, it can lead to a more balanced, authentic expression of masculinity, one that is not driven solely by societal expectations of strength and stoicism, but also by emotional richness and vulnerability. However, many men who remain emotionally immature tend to have a distorted or neglected relationship with their anima. Instead of viewing their inner feminine as a vital part of their identity, they may suppress or even distrust it, perceiving any association with feelings and intuition as a threat to their masculinity. This repression often stems from cultural norms that equate masculinity with emotional stoicism, independence, and self-reliance. Traits that, while valuable, can become pathological when they suppress other vital aspects of the self. In such cases, the anima becomes fragmented or disowned. Rather than embracing this inner female aspect, these men may project it outward or deny it altogether. They might dismiss their feelings as non-essential or not real in adult life, leading to a disconnect from their emotional self. When their inner feminine is suppressed or rejected, their emotional repertoire remains shallow. They struggle to experience empathy, vulnerability, or genuine intimacy. A man with a distorted relationship to his anima may exhibit behaviors that are reactive or superficial. He might appear emotionally distant or avoidant, dismissing the importance of emotional connection altogether. Alternatively, he could become overly dependent on external validation or seek comfort in superficial romances that fail to satisfy his deeper longing for connection and understanding. This typical pattern of denying or neglecting the anima prevents him from developing true emotional maturity. Moreover, this disconnection can manifest as a kind of inner turmoil, a chronic feeling that something is missing within. He may experience confusion about his feelings, difficulty expressing emotions, or a tendency to idealize the feminine or romanticize relationships, often projecting his inner feminine onto others rather than integrating it into his own identity. This projection can lead to unhealthy attachments or emotional dependency because he is searching outside himself for the qualities he has not yet integrated internally. The roots of this problematic relationship with the anima often lie in early childhood. Think of a boy who was told to suppress his feelings from an early age, or who grew up in an environment where emotional expression was discouraged or ridiculed. Such a boy might learn to distrust his own emotional nature and instead rely solely on logic and outward toughness as markers of maturity. Over time, his inner feminine qualities become fractured or dismissed, leading to an incomplete emotional development. The danger here is that these unresolved issues create a kind of internal dissonance that affects all areas of life. personal relationships, career, self-esteem. Men disconnected from their anima may struggle to form deep, meaningful bonds because they haven't learned how to access or trust their feelings. Their emotional aperture remains narrow, and they often dismiss their vulnerability or sensory experiences as unimportant or even shameful. For a man to grow beyond this immaturity, he must consciously begin to explore and integrate his anima. This process involves developing a relationship with his emotional self, learning to listen to his feelings without judgment, embracing vulnerability as a strength, and allowing empathy to guide his interactions. Connecting with the anima is not about surrendering masculinity, but about broadening it to include emotional depth, compassion, and intuitive understanding. Jung believed that authentic individuation, becoming the fully realized self, requires this integration of the anima. Men who do this work tend to become more emotionally intelligent, more capable of forming genuine relationships, and ultimately more balanced and mature. They learn that true strength lies not just in external control or independence, but also in embracing their inner tenderness, sensitivity, and nurturing qualities. Some men might find this journey challenging because it confronts deeply ingrained cultural messages that equate strength with emotional suppression. Society often rewards men for stoicism and discourages vulnerability, making it difficult to trust and nurture their inner feminine. Yet those who undertake this inner work discover that vulnerability is, in fact, a profound source of power, an essential component of true maturity. In stories of men who remain immature, it often appears that their relationship with their anima has been either entirely neglected or obsessively idealized. The environment in which a man is raised, the earliest moments with his caregivers, the messages he absorbs from society, and the cultural norms he encounters plays a pivotal role in shaping his emotional development. These foundational experiences can either lay the groundwork for mature adulthood or inadvertently hinder it, trapping many men in patterns rooted in childhood that persist into later life. From the very beginning, the way parents respond to a child's emotional needs is critical. In some cases, children are lovingly nurtured, encouraged to express their feelings, and supported in facing life's challenges, creating a solid foundation for healthy emotional development. But in many contexts, children encounter a different reality, one where emotional expression is met with discouragement, neglect, or harsh criticism. For example, a boy who grows up in a household where vulnerability is met with ridicule or punishment is likely to learn that showing emotion is dangerous or shameful. His parents might have emphasized toughness, independence, or self-reliance, perhaps out of their own fears or cultural conditioning. Such an environment teaches him that real strength means suppressing feelings, that emotional openness is a sign of weakness, and that maturity involves maintaining a stoic exterior at all costs. This upbringing can foster a kind of emotional immaturity, one where the man becomes adept at performing masculinity externally but struggles internally with emotional literacy. His ability to connect deeply, communicate vulnerably, or handle complex feelings may be stunted because his early environment communicated that such qualities are unacceptable or undesirable. Furthermore, societal norms often reinforce these messages. Many cultures imbue men with ideals of self-control, independence, and emotional resilience that discourage vulnerability and openness. Media portrayals of masculinity frequently emphasize strength, dominance, and emotional suppression as core attributes. These cultural standards create a template that many boys and men internalize, shaping their understanding of what it means to be mature or masculine. For instance, in societies where men are expected to be the primary breadwinners or protectors, success is often measured in external achievements, wealth, status, or physical strength, rather than emotional intelligence or relational depth. This focus on external markers can lead men to prioritize appearance over authenticity, to seek validation through accomplishments rather than inner growth. Moreover, cultural narratives about age and maturity tend to romanticize the idea that men should grow up by a certain age, leaving behind childish pursuits and embracing responsibility. Yet, these same narratives may neglect the internal struggles that often accompany genuine maturity, such as facing vulnerability, emotional discomfort, or confronting long-standing wounds. The pressure to conform to these ideals can create internal conflict for men who are emotionally unprepared or unwilling to do the inner work required. In many traditional settings, especially in more conservative cultures, expressions of emotion are discouraged altogether, and men might be explicitly told to man up or to hide their feelings behind a veneer of strength. In such environments, boys learn that emotional expression is incompatible with the ideal of masculinity that their culture projects. As a result, they tend to develop a defensive emotional architecture that guards against any displays of vulnerability, often leading to emotional immaturity. The influence of family dynamics extends far beyond initial emotional messages. For some men, harsh or inconsistent parenting, neglect or over-control can create a fragile self-image that yearns for validation but fears rejection. If, during childhood, their emotional needs were unmet or dismissed, they may carry a subconscious belief that their feelings are unworthy of acknowledgement, further hindering genuine psychological growth. Trauma or adverse childhood experiences also significantly impact this process. A boy who witnesses violence, experiences abandonment, or faces ongoing neglect may develop defensive mechanisms, such as emotional suppression or denial, that serve as survival strategies. These patterns, initially adaptive for coping in difficult environments, become maladaptive in adult life, trapping the man in a state of arrested development. Additionally, societal expectations often stigmatize the process of seeking help or confronting emotional pain. Men are culturally conditioned to be self-reliant, discouraging vulnerability and emotional openness. The internalized belief that seeking support signifies weakness can prevent men from engaging in therapy, self-reflection, or emotional work, thereby perpetuating their immature state. This cultural context also influences how men perceive responsibility and accountability. For many, maturity is associated with fulfilling external roles, being a provider, protector, or authority figure, rather than cultivating inner emotional health. When the external achievements are prioritized over internal growth, genuine maturity, as an integration of mind, body, and spirit, remains elusive. The socialization process can also foster peer pressures that discourage emotional expression. In many male peer groups, displaying vulnerability or sensitivity may be ridiculed or met with teasing, further conditioning men to suppress their feelings. Over time, this collective attitude creates an internalized barrier that makes emotional openness feel shameful or unsafe. Many men who find themselves emotionally arrested or stuck in perpetual adolescence develop and cling to a pattern of fantasizing, creating elaborate mental stories or idealized visions that serve as emotional refuges from the burdens of real life. These fantasies of heroism, eternal youth, invincibility, or romantic idealism act like emotional escapism, allowing the individual to avoid confronting the often painful or uncomfortable realities of maturity. Fantasies function as a shield, a way for men to fill the emotional voids left by unresolved childhood wounds, neglected shadows, or suppressed feelings. When faced with the complexities of adult life, responsibility, vulnerability, loss, or emotional intimacy, some men retreat into their mental worlds. They may imagine themselves as powerful, unbreakable heroes who never experience failure or pain, or they may romanticize relationships that perpetually reinforce their idealized notions of love, always just out of reach. These mental constructs have a deeply ingrained allure because they provide temporary relief from internal discomfort. For example, a man who feels insecure about his worth might fantasize about being universally admired, exceptionally talented, or completely free of flaws. This fantasy becomes a form of narcissistic compensation, feeding his ego and providing a false sense of security. It helps him maintain a facade of confidence, even when he feels fragile beneath the surface. Similarly, some men become obsessed with ideas of eternal youth, often engaging in reckless behaviors, excessive partying, risky pursuits, or indulgent habits that reinforce this desire to cling to the carefree, unburdened state of adolescence. These pursuits distract from emotional growth because they divert attention away from confronting deeper issues, such as feelings of inadequacy, jealousy, or fears of aging and mortality. Romantic fantasies are another common form of escapism. Watching idealized portrayals of love in movies or seeking out superficial relationships can serve as a way to avoid the vulnerability required for genuine intimacy. These illusions provide a safe mental space where the man remains detached from real connection, never having to face the messiness of emotional risk, rejection, or deep vulnerability. Such fantasies often sustain the illusion that true love or happiness is always just beyond reach, reinforcing a perpetual sense of dissatisfaction with the present moment. Fantasies also act as defense mechanisms to avoid failure or disappointment. When a man fears failure, he might retreat into daydreams of success without putting in the effort or facing potential rejection. These imagined realities serve as a buffer against the painful truths of imperfection, inadequacy, or loss. They keep him in a fantasy realm where he can feel in control, powerful, and untouched by life's inevitable hardships. However, these fantasies, while temporarily comforting, prevent genuine growth because they disconnect the individual from the reality of his current life. They create a kind of emotional immaturity, the refusal to accept life's imperfections, limitations, or the necessity of responsibility. Instead of facing discomfort directly, the man prefers to stay in his mental bubble, where he is the hero, the perpetual youth, or the lover of idealized love. Furthermore, fantasies can become addictive, feeding a cycle of discontent. The more a man retreats into his mental stories, the less he engages with real-world challenges and opportunities for personal development. Over time, this escapism can lead to feelings of stagnation, dissatisfaction, and loneliness because the illusions no longer fulfill him on a deeper level. Authentic connection and growth require facing reality with honesty, courage, and vulnerability, traits that are incompatible with the escapist comfort of fantasy. Many such men unconsciously develop a love affair with their own fantasies because they provide a sense of control in an uncontrollable world. The truth is that they fear the messiness of real emotional engagement, the potential for rejection or failure, or the pain of aging and mortality. Instead of confronting these fears directly, they keep repeating their mental stories, avoiding the pain while missing the lessons that come with authentic growth. In some cases, these fantasies are rooted in childhood ideals that were never fulfilled, or in childhood scars that continue to cause psychological wounds. For example, a man who was told he was destined for greatness might cling to the fantasy of being extraordinary, compensating for feelings of insignificance. Or a boy who experienced neglect may develop grandiose fantasies to compensate for feelings of worthlessness. The danger of persisting in these fantasy worlds is that they distort reality, preventing men from seeing who they truly are and what they genuinely need to heal or grow. They become trapped in a loop of wishful thinking, craving the idealized life or identity that exists only in their minds. This prevents the development of resilience, patience, and authenticity, hallmarks of true maturity. The path out of this cycle involves developing awareness of these fantasies and understanding their purpose, mainly self-protection and avoidance. Despite the patterns of immaturity explored in previous chapters, whether through hiding behind masks, rejecting emotions, engaging in escapism, or fantasy, the possibility of transformation remains a core tenet of Jungian psychology. Jung believed that no matter how deeply ingrained certain patterns are, change is always within reach. The bold step toward growth begins with awareness, recognizing one's own patterns, acknowledging the parts of oneself that have been disowned or unintegrated, and summoning the courage to face discomfort head-on. There are countless stories of men who, faced with a crisis, be it loss, failure, betrayal, or loneliness, have chosen to confront their inner selves instead of retreating into old defenses. These stories serve as beacons of hope, illustrating that even the most stuck or immature individuals can begin a healing journey. Take the example of a man in his 40s who, after a failed marriage and a career setback, hits a point of crisis, feeling empty, disconnected, and exhausted from maintaining a facade of strength. He begins attending therapy, not out of a sense of vulnerability but out of desperation. As he slowly explores his childhood wounds, his fears, and his unacknowledged feelings, he starts to realize how much of his identity was built on societal expectations and a refusal to confront vulnerability. This recognition is painful but liberating. With support, he begins to embrace his inner feminine, allowing himself to feel sadness and tenderness that he had long suppressed. This process does not happen overnight. It involves committed inner work, journaling, reflection, seeking guidance from mentors or therapists, and crucially, a willingness to accept imperfections. As he continues on this path, he begins cultivating emotional intelligence, learning to communicate his feelings honestly, and deeply repairing his relationships. Over time, he experiences a transformation into a more authentic, grounded man, one who no longer hides behind a false persona, but walks his path with integrity. Another compelling story is that of a young man who grew up in a toxic environment where assertiveness was equated with aggression and emotional expression was sharply discouraged. As an adult, he carried a lingering sense of inadequacy and an inability to form deep connections. His first step toward growth was recognizing these patterns, seeing that his avoidance of vulnerability was rooted in childhood fears. He sought out a community of men engaged in emotional work, or men's circles, where vulnerability was welcomed and celebrated. Through consistent participation, he gradually allowed himself to share his fears and shortcomings, discovering that emotional openness did not diminish his masculinity, but enriched it. These experiences, facing fears, sharing feelings, and embracing vulnerability, paved the way for a profound inner shift. He learned that authentic strength includes the courage to be vulnerable, that true resilience is built on understanding and integrating one's shadows. His relationships improved as he no longer projected his insecurities outward, but owned them internally. Similarly, stories from individuals who faced physical or emotional trauma often highlight extraordinary journeys of healing. Such men, after experiencing devastating loss or betrayal, chose to undertake deep inner work, sometimes through therapy, spiritual practices, or creative outlets, to heal their wounded parts. These journeys often involve confronting lifelong habits of denial, defensiveness, or escapism, and replacing them with honesty, compassion, and self-awareness. In doing so, they discover new sources of strength, not in denial or suppression, but in vulnerability and authenticity. The process of transformation also involves recognizing and working through the shame that often accompanies immaturity. Shame, the feeling of being fundamentally flawed, can be paralyzing and keeps men bound in their immature patterns. But Jungian psychology emphasizes that shame, like other emotions, can be a doorway when approached with compassion. If a man can learn to see his shame as a signal pointing to unresolved wounds or unmet needs, he can begin to heal and integrate those parts of himself. Transformation requires patience. It's a gradual process of peeling back layers of protection, confronting fears, and discovering one's true self, often buried beneath years of conditioning and self-protection. It involves forgiving oneself for past mistakes and understanding that growth is a lifelong journey, not a destination. Crucially, stories of transformation often highlight the importance of community and mentorship. Men who connect with others committed to growth, whether through therapy, spiritual groups, or meaningful brotherhood, find that shared vulnerability fosters accountability, encouragement, and resilience. Witnessing someone else's courage to face their shadows can inspire us to do the same. Another inspiring narrative includes men who, after years of emotional stagnation, finally embrace their inner child, reclaiming playfulness, curiosity, and innocence. Engaging in activities that evoke joy, arts, music, adventure, helps reconnect them with their authentic selves and fosters healing from past wounds. Reaching a state of genuine maturity is not a matter of simply aging or accumulating external achievements. It is a conscious, deliberate process of inner transformation. For men who find themselves stuck in patterns of immaturity, the journey begins with a profound commitment to self-awareness. Recognizing that deep change is possible is the first, most vital step. Without awareness, efforts at growth are superficial or disconnected. With awareness, transformation becomes a genuine pursuit rooted in honesty and courage. The process of maturing involves developing a habit of honest self-reflection, regularly asking oneself tough questions like, what are my fears? What parts of myself do I hide or deny? Where do I avoid responsibility or emotional pain? Engaging in practices such as journaling can serve as a mirror that reveals unconscious patterns. Setting aside dedicated time each day or week to reflect on one's emotions, behaviors, and motivations helps cultivate a deeper understanding of oneself. Coupled with reflection, seeking feedback from trusted friends, mentors, or therapists is invaluable. Sometimes we are blind to our blind spots, and an external perspective can illuminate truths we prefer to ignore. Developing a circle of honest, compassionate companions, whether in therapeutic, peer, or spiritual groups, creates a safe space for vulnerability and accountability. Sharing struggles and successes with others fosters humility, patience, and resilience. Another key step involves confronting and working through one's shadows. As Jung emphasized, integration of the shadow is fundamental to wholeness. Men motivated by superficial notions of strength and who avoid vulnerability must learn to accept their full selves, the flawed, wounded, and vulnerable parts too long kept hidden. This might involve therapies like shadow work, visualization, or creative outlets such as art, music, or writing, which allow expression of feelings that are difficult to articulate. The pursuit of individuation, the process of becoming one's authentic self, also requires deliberately cultivating virtues such as humility, patience, compassion, and courage. Developing these qualities often involves intentionally practicing behaviors that challenge ingrained habits. For instance, a man might consciously choose to listen deeply to others without immediately offering solutions or judgments, thereby practicing patience and empathy. Or he might volunteer or serve others, which fosters compassion and breaks down ego-centered thinking. Inner work also entails embracing emotional intelligence. This involves learning to identify, accept, and express one's feelings in a healthy way. Developing emotional literacy allows a man to navigate complex human relationships, foster intimacy, and understand others' perspectives. Techniques such as mindfulness meditation can increase awareness of emotional states and reduce reactivity, fostering a calmer, more centered presence. Practicing vulnerability is a critical, yet often overlooked pathway to maturity. This means daring to share fears, insecurities, and hopes with trusted others. Vulnerability is the soil in which real connection and trust grow. Engaging in honest dialogue with loved ones or participating in men's groups dedicated to emotional sharing can catalyze this process. The courage to be vulnerable also involves accepting imperfection, recognizing that making mistakes, showing weakness, and experiencing setbacks are all natural parts of growth. A practical method to advance this journey is to set specific, achievable goals focused on emotional and spiritual development. For example, a man might commit to daily meditation, weekly therapy sessions, or participating in a workshop or retreat centered on personal growth. Consistency in these practices over time deepens understanding and reinforces new patterns. In addition, cultivating a mindset of continuous learning is fundamental. This might include reading books on psychology, spirituality, or philosophy that challenge ingrained beliefs and expand perspectives. Attending seminars, engaging in supervised coaching, or pursuing new skills can also foster a growth-oriented attitude. Recognizing that maturity is a lifelong pursuit, not a finite achievement, promotes patience and resilience in the face of setbacks. It's vital to recognize that the path to maturation often involves discomfort and pain. Facing one's shadows, confronting fears, or admitting shortcomings can be unsettling. Developing resilience and a compassionate attitude towards oneself during this process creates a fertile ground for sustained change. Embracing the difficulties as opportunities for growth rather than failures fosters inner strength and perseverance. Integral to this journey is integrating the insights gained, turning awareness into action. For instance, if during reflection a man recognizes a pattern of emotional avoidance, he might consciously practice opening up emotionally with a trusted friend. If he notices a tendency to seek superficial validation, he can work on cultivating internal validation through personal achievements rooted in authenticity rather than external approval. Finally, engaging in spiritual or contemplative practices can deepen this process. Whether through prayer, meditation, or other spiritual disciplines, connecting with a sense of higher purpose or universal consciousness can provide perspective, humility, and a sense of interconnectedness. Such practices help transcend the ego-centered focus that often maintains immaturity and opens the door to genuine self-transcendence. As we come to the end of this exploration into why some men remain trapped in immaturity, those eternal boys who struggle to grow up and face their true selves, it's important to remember that this journey is deeply personal and profoundly transformative. Everyone's path toward maturity looks different, shaped by unique experiences, challenges, and opportunities. But what unites all these stories is the fundamental truth that change is possible. No matter how long you've been stuck or how deep the patterns run, within you lies the power to evolve and become the most authentic version of yourself. Throughout this video, we've delved into the psychological roots that keep many men in a state of emotional adolescence. From the masks they wear and the shadows they hide, to their relationship with the inner feminine, societal influences, and the escapist fantasies they retreat into. We've seen that healing and growth require courage, honesty, and patience. It's about facing uncomfortable truths, embracing vulnerability, and taking deliberate steps towards inner integration. Now, I want to remind you that this isn't just a theoretical discussion. It's a call to action for anyone listening who recognizes parts of themselves in these patterns. You have the power to initiate change today. Begin with small steps. Practice self-awareness. Journal your thoughts and feelings. Reach out to someone you trust, or seek professional guidance. Remember that growth is a process, not an overnight achievement. Every moment spent in honest reflection, every vulnerability you dare to show, and every challenge you face head-on brings you closer to the mature, authentic self you are capable of becoming. This journey is also about community. You don't have to do it alone. Connecting with others who are on a similar path creates a space of mutual support, understanding, and accountability. Whether through men's groups, therapy, spiritual communities, or online forums, sharing your journey and hearing others' stories can be incredibly empowering. It reminds us that we are not isolated in our struggles and that healing is possible through collective effort and compassion. Remember, every step you take, no matter how small, is a victory. Celebrate your progress and practice patience with yourself. Growth involves setbacks, moments of doubt, and challenges along the way. These are natural parts of the process. The important thing is to persist, to keep showing up, and to trust that each effort adds to your evolution. If you've found value in this video, I encourage you to continue engaging with this kind of content. Our channel is dedicated to exploring the depths of the human psyche, understanding psychological patterns, and offering insights that can help you live a more conscious and fulfilled life. By subscribing, you will become part of a community committed to personal growth, awareness, and authentic maturity. You'll gain access to more videos, practical exercises, interviews, and resources designed to support your journey. So, if you're ready to take the next step, whether it's deepening your self-awareness, working through your shadows, or cultivating emotional maturity, subscribe to our channel. Hit that subscribe button and activate notifications so you never miss an opportunity to learn, grow, and transform. Remember, the path to maturity is a lifelong journey, but every moment of awareness and effort counts. Your story is still unfolding, and the best chapters are yet to be written. Embrace your potential, commit to your growth, and know that you are not alone on this journey. We're here to walk alongside you, to cheer for your victories, and to support you through your struggles. Your transformation begins today. Step into your power, face yourself courageously, and let your inner work illuminate the path to the authentic, mature life you deserve. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Be brave, stay curious, and keep moving forward. You're capable of remarkable change. Make that choice today. Subscribe now, and let's continue this journey of growth together.